New Belgium, 5054. Let's put it in the koozie. I should be pouring it into a glass, but I had an accident down here with my glass before, so figured it'd be best to not bring it back down here. Let's get into it. So, it was actually a lot harder choosing a photo to edit than I think it will be to convey this edit. Though I do have a very bright light shining in my face, it might prove to be difficult to pick out some of this detail just because my eyes are being washed out. So we'll do the best that we can. So yeah, let's just kind of get into it. This here is a photo that was taken on my Colorado trip out in Estes Park. I think this was over Estes Lake one evening. I actually posted a photo a few days back. It was a wider shot of Estes, this scene. This is just a little bit punched in. This one's at 97 millimeters. The other one I think was at 24. So I guess first things first, I don't do anything with the temperature that much. I shoot auto white balance. So there's really not a whole lot to be done there most of the time, unless there's some creative aspect that I want to apply to the photo, then I'll mess with it. But otherwise, I don't mess with it that much. I mean, the white balance looks pretty good on it right now as it is. A little bit cooler, kind of right where I want it. As far as tint goes, I don't really mess with that a ton either, unless, you know, there's too much of one or the other, green or magenta. So first thing I do is, I'm gonna close that out with Command 1. I'll go to my calibration tab. Typically that's what I'll do first. I do like to push teals a bit in my photos, so I'll go ahead and do that. And it's really just trial and error. You know, I don't want it to be super dull and gray like that, but I also don't want it to be super blue. So, you know, I want it to be somewhere in between. Maybe just 0. I usually just really like to play with the sliders a bit. I could have just said that's my editing process, it's just playing around with colors and the sliders for exposure and stuff like that, but I figured I'd make a video instead. So bringing up the saturation on that eye, you can see brings up blues, brings up a little bit of the reds as well, but there's not a whole lot of red there. Just some down here in the buildings and in the trees there. So I don't really want that. Might just bring it up just a bit right there. Cool, so kind of see how that's looking. It's kind of hard to tell. We'll go dark real quick, just hit L twice. So we can kind of see that the teal has been brought out in the mountains, and the foreground here has been darkened just a little bit. So that's good, I like that. Cool, so then from there we'll go into our exposure, shadows, whites, stuff like that. Typically I like to bring the exposure down just a little bit, unless it's a really dark photo. It helps bring out the detail a bit. Same with highlights, I'll bring them down unless I think it needs it, but I'll just bring them down until where I think there's enough detail in the sky there, nothing's being blown out. I'm looking up here as well, seeing there's some clipping in the shadows somewhere, but that's okay, we'll deal with that. And the highlights, there's really not a whole lot of highlights going on here. This is a very, I wouldn't say it's a neutral photo, but I don't want to push those highlights like that. You know, I don't want the sky to be blown out. So we're gonna keep it right there. We might adjust this highlights back just a bit. Okay, as far as shadows go, I'll probably end up, so you can see the mountains. So right now I'm looking at these mountains in here. I want these to be visible, but I don't necessarily want the foreground to be visible. So we'll get there in a few minutes. But for right now, I like where those shadows are sitting up here in the mountains. Maybe dial it back just a little bit. Whites, I do want to push the whites in the sky just a little bit more. Maybe bring back those highlights. Push whites. Give it a little bit more contrast. And I will add contrast, but we'll dip the blacks first here. And then add just a little bit of contrast. Not too much. I will bring the vibrance down a little bit on my photos. I've been doing, this is a more recent thing that I've been doing. And and it just, it gives a little more natural look, I guess. So before, after. I don't really like it to be super, I like colorful photos, but I think there's a time and a place, and a lot of the photos I've been taking recently have just kind of called for that moody, contrasty vibe. So that's why I've been, recently dipping vibrance, about to -10, -13. I will throw some dehaze on there. Again, not a ton, just enough to add a little bit more contrast, clarity. Again, I'll play with that. I do like what it's doing there higher, but I'm hesitant on, I just don't like that. So we'll add a little bit. Makes a difference. Cool, so that's basics. Tones. I will first start out doing my exposure curve here before I mess with any of these other curves like the red, green, blue. Typically start with the middle curve here. I don't really like what it's doing either way, so I'll probably just leave that alone. I'll, again, maybe push some of those highlights just ever so gently. And I'll probably bring, no, I'm liking where that's sitting. So, see, we got some clipping down there, as you can see, right in here, but that's okay. I'm not too worried about that. I am worried when things like main elements of a picture clip, as far as highlights or blacks or shadows, stuff like that. I'm more so looking for that, not necessarily like trees in the foreground that aren't really going to be seen anyways in the final edit. I'm not really worried about those clipping as much. So this one actually really doesn't need a ton. I might, I might bring these up again, and then I'll just bring I'll bring these blacks back down there. So just, again, to bring out some of the mountains. So before, after, I'm liking how that's looking. We'll go over to red curve here. 3 points, like I did in my other, just to have more control over what's being added where. I typically like to throw, again, some more of the teal blue here into the shadows. So I won't do a lot though, just enough. So anywhere from 2 to 4. And I can turn that off, turn it back on. So again, it's pulling out just a little bit of detail. I really don't mess with green or blue a ton at all. So from there, well, let's make sure lens correction. I'll make sure we are removing chromatic aberrations, and I will enable profile corrections. But that just, the photo gets imported like that, so I don't really worry about that much. Really, after adjustments for exposure, I will go into coloring and more creative stuff. So again, I do like some teal there in the mountains. Kind of just play with it a bit. It's a little too much, so I'll dial it back. It's really hard. I have a Kensington trackball mouse. This is it's really tough to use in Lightroom here. Probably dip down the luminance a bit, so that way you can see it's bringing out the sky a bit more. You are losing a little bit of detail, but we'll handle that. And depending on the mood, I don't really like the blues as much, so we might bring that down just a little bit, -6 there. So let's see. My eyes are being washed out still, so I'm trying to do my best. So it does look like we have a little bit of possibly some yellow, maybe some orange and red down there, so I don't want that to be as noticeable, so I might just bring the saturation down. Nope. Okay, that's not doing anything. Yeah, you can kind of see some change in there, so I'll just bring that down a little bit. Final product, you're probably not going to be able to see a ton I'm gonna bring these teals back down a bit. Probably not gonna be able to see a ton in this foreground come the final edit. And again, being my brain, I totally forgot to crop, so I will go ahead and rotate and kind of get it to a point where a little bit straighter than before. And if it is a portrait style photo, I will typically crop for Instagram on a 4x5, and then I'll just kind of I'll export a full photo as well. So that way I have, photo for Instagram that I can pull, and then a photo for full that I can print, or whatever. From there, I will sometimes do color grading. I don't do color grading a lot. I really don't think this needs it. So yeah, from there I will go to adding some filters, a graduated filter, a radial, just to kind of draw the eye a bit more. So this is where I feel like a lot of the final photo comes from. Like, this process helps a lot in drawing the eye and really fine-tuning the details that you want. So like I said earlier, I'm not sure I want a lot of this foreground visible. It might be cool, but I want the focus to be more on the mountains. But you know what, we're gonna try it anyways. Let's see what it would look like if we brightened up this foreground a bit. So it already comes, I don't know why, it just ups the exposure anyways. So I'll bring up some of the shadows there. Yeah, I'm not a fan. Maybe just the lake. Yeah, maybe we'll just throw some. We'll throw some light on that lake there. But I do not want this visible. So what I'm going to end up doing is throwing on another graduated filter. I'm going to, again, darken it. So I'm looking at where the houses are right now. I'm going to darken it a bit. I'm gonna bring down the shadows a bit. And then I'm gonna go over here to brush. I'm gonna go to erase. And then I wanna keep what this graduated filter is doing here. So I'm just gonna erase the lake from the graduated filter that I have set for where the houses are. So I'm not sure if I got it all. Let's see, how we doing? Yep, well, maybe we can come down here. All right. Cool, I am happy with that. So maybe we'll bring down the exposure just a little bit more. Bring some highlights up to get some of the details out of it. Bring down the exposure just a little bit more. So again, my eyes are being washed out. I'll just go lights out real quick just to kind of see where we're at, before and after here. All right, I'm liking how this is looking so far. And then I'll probably go ahead and do one for the sky as well. Graduated filter. I do want to bring out those clouds a bit more, so I'll probably add a little more contrast. I'll bring down the shadows and the blacks a bit, and then maybe add a little bit of dehaze. Highlights I might bring, not sure, I might bring them back down still. Bring whites up. Maybe add a little bit of clarity. Again, that'll darken those clouds just a little bit more. Again, I'll go over here to the brush, and I'm going to erase what this graduated filter has done in the mountains, because I want these mountains to be treated separately. So let's go ahead and just make the size of that brush a little bit smaller so I can get over here on the mountains. Yep. This might prove to be a little tough. That looks alright to me. So again, we'll go ahead and brush over these here. So I want to treat these separately. Right, and we'll go ahead and see where we're at with that. So definitely missing some in here, but that's all right. Probably not enough to make a difference in the photo, but we'll try to be consistent here. All right. There's probably an easier way to see it, but I have not found it out yet. So we're just gonna continue to see how that looks. Yep, it's close enough for me. So, oh, well, hold on. It looks like we got a little bit of, looks like it bled over a bit there. So, yeah, you might be able to see that. So we'll go back here and maybe just reapply up here in the mountains. Cool, I like that. All right, and now we'll go to radial filters, and this is really gonna help. This is where things really help draw the eye in. So I want the center of the image to be focused. I want the viewer's focus to be right here in the middle. So I'm gonna go ahead and invert it. And I'm gonna, I like to add clarity in the middle, because again, it adds a little bit of contrast, as you can see, but it also adds an element, a creative element as well, that helps bring up the shadows and brings out the whites a bit there. So I do like what it's doing, so I might add a little bit more than I usually would. Maybe bring out some whites. Might throw, yeah, I'll bring down the dehaze just a little bit. A little bit goes a long way. Might bring up the highlights a little bit. Bring up the shadows a little. Nope, you know what? I don't like that. We'll bring down the shadows a bit and add a little bit of contrast. All right, and you can see that is treating this center area here. Maybe we'll bring it up just a bit so we can reach those clouds as well. But keeping this right here, the foreground, out of it, because that is already treated. So I'm just treating the mountains and the clouds to bring the eye in a little bit. So we're gonna go ahead and create a new radial, and I'm gonna kind of place it over the same area roughly. But this time I'm not gonna invert it. I'll feather it a little bit more, but I'm gonna go ahead and just lower the exposure a little bit on the outside of this. So that way, again, the viewer's eye is drawn more into the center of the image where I want it to be. I might add a little bit of dehaze, depending, but other than that, I don't do a whole lot more because I've already treated a lot of this, and we are clipping a lot down there. So I might go ahead and update this right here, and I might bring the exposure back up just a little bit. Bring the shadows back up. It's too much for me. Am I worried about those trees? Not too much. You are losing detail in there, but in my opinion, the detail is, for this photo, not necessary. You know, I'm not worried about it. So I do like the contrasty look that this has going for it. So, all right, well, I mean, that might be it for me. Let's go lights out, and let's go before, and we'll go after. And yeah, wow. So yeah, I do like how you can see a little bit of the houses there. They kind of, you know, contrast the dark trees. This tree line here is, you know, lighting up a bit, and I think that provides a nice, I don't want it to be all dark, but again, it brings out the detail just a little bit more. Yeah, there's really nothing I want to adjust, nothing I really want to fix that's screaming at me. I like how the reflection pops a little bit more down here on the lake, and I like how the eye is really drawn into here. Hopefully this was insightful or helped. Hopefully you can take something away from it. Other than that, thanks for watching, and let me know if you guys want to see any other videos. Otherwise, I hope this helped, and I'll see you on the next one.